Mr. Mann, you are recognized with the gentleman from Alabama on deck.
Well, thank you. Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Davis, thanks for doing this very important hearing. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. I represent the big First District of Kansas, which is 60 primarily rural counties in the western and central part of Kansas. Investment and access to capital is critical for success in our rural communities across Kansas and around the country, and we've got to ensure that these communities don't fall behind because they lack the resources that the more urban cities are afforded, which is why this is so important. You know, in my view, it's essential that Congress and the USDA continue to work to supply our rural communities with the tools they need so these communities can economically thrive. And I think we've got to, you know, remember we are all here because we care deeply about rural communities. And I would argue the reason everyone should care about rural communities is rural communities are where the values that make America are still alive and well, which I would say are things like faith, family, hard work, personal responsibility, caring for our neighbors. But we've got to make sure that we keep our rural communities going because that's where these values are still alive and well. So there's a lot at stake. And again, I just appreciate y'all for being here. A handful of questions. First for you, Commissioner Heimel, Pennsylvania. In your testimony, you mentioned how counties and regional entities should be able to bundle small projects into a single coordinated application. This makes a lot of sense to me. And, you know, just the fact that these programs are intended for rural communities also means that those communities that are applying for them don't have big staffs. You have people that are wearing multiple hats trying to fill out these applications. I think this notion of bundling these things makes a lot of sense. What programs under the USDA Rural Development would you think would benefit the most from this sort of an approach?
Well, quite frankly, you know, I don't have the intimate knowledge of the USDA RD programs per se. I would say that when I refer to the bundling, I'm speaking about trying to put together projects from different entities that have the same goal in mind, and I think it would require changes in regulations that might not be all that hard to accomplish that takes into account the rural county needs. Maybe one of my colleagues would be a little more familiar with the particulars of the RD programs, but philosophically, I think there's ways to streamline it, and we can put things together. What we need to be is funded and trusted and enabled at the local level, and we'll bring this through.
That's great. Does anyone want to comment on that? If there's some specific things you feel like could be bundled or put together to make the application process just simpler, easier, more efficient?
Yes, I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
I think that especially in the light of fewer employees and needing to streamline some things, that certainly, and especially like the B&I program, the CF program, is bundling. They do bundle in the CF program the guarantee and the direct lending and making it easier, but having more flexibility to include more of a regional basis is certainly a good idea and a possibility that should be considered. Certainly having just some, what I would think is pretty basic technology, online portals for your lenders, for having online applications for either customers, the grant programs that can kind of walk you through. I mean, student loan programs kind of walk you through. There are programs that walk you through to do your taxes, and it seems like there could be some development of a program to help these communities do that, and then that process, understand all the factors that come into that, and if that is a regional basis, there is the RISE program, which is a regional requirement to have, but that's really technical assistance and that sort of thing, not really the hospitals and other things that are typically only in a single community.
Yeah, that's great. Ms. Torres, small thoughts. Good to see you again. You have a great perspective on this. Thoughts, ideas?
So the back end is also really important. So you've got the same staff on the ground administering community facilities and water programs often, but they use different portals for uploading things. And so being able to work on some of those back end pieces is very important. And then also housing. So you've got, I mean, in terms of people who have the least resources, folks who are applying for a rural development loan are some of the most low resourced. So being able to check their account status online is a fundamental need that isn't addressed right now.
Great. Well, thank you again for having this hearing. Thank you all for being here, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. At this time, the